Hello, everyone. Welcome to a new episode of the Sini podcast. Today we have Sarah Han, who is a PhD researcher in anthropology. So she now is doing her PhD in the US, but she is researching about gender, ethnicity, and fashion in the UAE. And she herself is a children of migrants. So today we have her in the studio to talk about her experience of migration, of moving between the US and the UAE, and also her sense of cultural heritage as a Chinese immigrant.
Yeah,
in
thanks
the
so
US.
much for having me.
So maybe Sarah, we can begin by you introducing a bit about yourself. What's your trajectory of migration, and what is your family background?
Yeah, sure. Yeah, so as you said, I'm a PhD student now, and I've been living here in the UAE since 2024, but my family moved here back in 2005. So, going back a little bit of background, I'm a fourth generation American on my mom's side, third generation on my dad's side. My mom's family moved from China, from South China to the US in the early 1900s, and she was born and raised in California. And my dad's family moved from Shanghai to Taiwan. He was born in the US but lived between Taiwan and the US for his childhood and growing up. I was born in the US as well as my siblings, and then we all moved over here when I was about 10 years old. And then since then, I have lived in the UAE through the rest of grade school, and then I did university in the US. I worked some, I did my master's program, and then I came and worked in Ras Al Khaimah for some time doing an internship, and then I went back to the US to do my PhD. But my family's been based out of here for about 20 years, so I've been coming back and forth to see my family as well.
So when you first moved to the UAE, how old were you, and what was it like to move here?
Yeah, I was 10 years old, and it was a huge change, and Dubai was a very different place than it is today. At the time, people didn't really know where Dubai was, where now, when you talk about Dubai, everybody has a connotation and images they've seen online, viral things that they've seen on social media. But at the time, Dubai really was at a very different place. It was before Dubai Mall, before Burj Khalifa, and so the connotation of moving to Dubai was much more unknown. And I was moving from the suburbs of Philadelphia to to Dubai, which was just completely culturally and linguistically and contextually different place. You know.
So you attended school here when you moved here. What was it like to go to school, as a Chinese American immigrant?
Yeah, when I first came, then I was attending Al Mawakib School in Al Barsha, and so it was very different. Um, it was predominantly Arab, Middle Eastern, Iranian local classmates. And as someone who is Chinese heritage, Chinese American, I looked very different than most of my classmates. And then after a couple of years, then I moved over to Dubai American Academy, which was also in Al Barsha at the time. And that was much more international in terms of the nationalities that were represented there. And the curriculum was an American curriculum. Um, and there were more East Asian and some Chinese international students as well. So there were some more people that looked more like me. Um, but both, I would say, both were quite different experiences from each other and quite different experiences from my schooling experience prior to that as well.
So what did you think was the major challenge for you when you moved here to start school?
In the school, there was just so much that was unfamiliar. The classmates I was meeting came from such a different cultural context that I hadn't experienced before. Um, there's some of the normal things that I think happen in schooling, like bullying or feeling like because I was a minority, then I felt very much like I stood out. Um, and yeah, I'd say one of the biggest challenges was navigating such a different place from what I was familiar with before.
So what was it like in the school? Were there many students that are like non-locals or come from abroad like you?
A lot of people, so in Al Mawakib, a lot of people were also from the region. They maybe weren't local. There were a lot of local classmates as well, But it wasn't uncommon to see people who were not local, but they're predominantly still from somewhere in the region. So maybe South Asia or Levant or Iran or North Africa. So I stood out a lot in that sense, and also as not only East Asian heritage and visually very different, but then also as an Asian American, there was like nobody else other than my sister who was also like Asian American. There was one other classmate, a friend of mine, who was half Filipino and half Arab. I think she was half Tunisian. And so that was the one other person who maybe looked a little bit like me at that school. But then moving to the American school, then there's a lot more diversity of people from all over.
Did you have big celebrations in school over like the Islamic holidays, or what kind of occasions did you celebrate with your family or your friends when you were here?
In the first school, then National Day is a big celebration, which now they call Eid al-Attihad. And then, of course, all of the typical times off for Ramadan, like Ramadan timings for school or for the Eids. With my family, more privately, we would always celebrate Chinese New Year. And we have just within my family, we'd have a Chinese New Year celebration. And do like a tea ceremony and do the red envelopes. But it's just my nuclear family of my parents and my siblings. As we got older, then there were also a lot of International Day sorts of celebrations too. So then you would maybe bring something that's from your culture heritage for food to share, or wear clothing that represented it.
What was it like to participate in the Islamic holidays or the National Day event?
I remember the big assemblies we would have out on the playground, where there would be different dances or like singing the national anthem, things like that, where it'd be the whole school together, and then all the parents would come and be the audience for all of the students to present. And then I also remember back at this time, then it was a big deal just in the larger community, where people would get their cars decorated and you would just see like a big celebration. It still happens some here, but I think it was to an even bigger degree at the time, where you'd see the celebrating in the streets. And still people do this, like they are spraying shaving cream or silly string, and just a big celebration of the community coming together for something like National Day.
Right. So you said there were dances. Were there was that like traditional Emirati dances, or what was it like?
Yeah, so that was the Emirati dances. So for the young girls, they were doing the hair dance. For the boys, then they were doing the dance with the yula, or else with the wooden guns. And then they'd often get dressed up as...
Yeah, so you, did you have to learn Arabic in school, and how was the experience like learning this language?
Yeah, so when I first moved here, then I had to learn Arabic and Al-Muwaqib. I had to learn Arabic and French. And then once I got to the American school, I had to choose a foreign language, and I chose Arabic again. One of the things for me, being ethnically Chinese, but also having so many generations outside of China, is I don't speak any Chinese, which often shocks people because they just assume, of course, you would speak Mandarin or some dialect or something. But I speak English and I speak some Arabic. When I first moved here, then I was the only new student in my class, and so I had to learn Arabic very quickly to catch up with my class. I had to learn the alphabet very quickly. So I would say from the beginning, it's only studying Fusha in school. And it's not practical when you actually want to have a conversation with somebody. It's very different than what it feels like to talk in Arabic. And so I studied it for a very long time. I studied it through IB. But I would say it wasn't until later when I really looked for programs and opportunities, especially with my research, wanting to increase my language capacity, to be able to do interviews in Arabic and to build a relationship in Arabic. Then I was able to learn more the Khaliji Arabic. So now I'd say I'm conversationally like somewhat fluent, but not fluent. And so it's easy to learn the alphabet and to learn to sound things out, but then to actually learn the grammar and to be able to get to a place where you can pull up the right conjugation and everything quickly, it takes time and practice. And I think especially because if you're living in a place like Dubai specifically, then it's very hard to find opportunities to use Arabic. So finding friends who are willing to sit with you while you struggle through Arabic, it takes a lot of patience from other people to learn the language as well. So I've been very thankful to have very patient and kind friends who have helped me along with my language.
And as you said, you have many different identities, and one of that is being a Chinese immigrant in the U.S. And how does it feel, to come here as a Chinese American and being in the Emirates in an Arab majority society?
I think my identity as Asian American in the UAE, and then also being somebody who's visually Asian in the UAE, is something that confuses people sometimes. Now I think with social media, people have a better understanding of, there's Asian diaspora all around the world, and there's a long history of Asians in places like California, on the West Coast, in the US. So there's more awareness in general than there was maybe 20 years ago. When people ask me where I'm from and I'll say America, then they'll ask me, where are you really from? Or they'll ask me where my parents are from, which my parents are both born in the US, like I said, so I'll say the US. And then they start going back and back to try to figure out what ethnicity I am. So I do think my Asian Americanness is sometimes not something that makes sense categorically. Also the language piece, like I was saying, the fact that I don't speak Mandarin can confuse people. Like, how could you not have that part of your heritage? But there's a history to that as well. And there's a history, my family's history, there's a history of this emphasis on assimilation that was really predominant during my parents' growing up years, especially from my mom's family history. And then I think going to the US and being somebody who has spent so many formative years here in the UAE, that's another thing that's not very legible for people in general, because I sound so American. I look visually and aesthetically very Asian American, and the experience of being in this Gulf context is so formative to how I go through the world, but it's not something that people would necessarily be able to see unless I either tell them or they're interested to kind of investigate, interrogate that.
So when you moved back from here to the US, what were some of the things that you missed most from Dubai or from the UAE in general?
The UAE is so international, and people come here from all over the world, and they remain connected to so many places, whether it's the country they were born in, their country their family's from. So there's a lot of cultural diversity that's assumed here, where you learn to operate across cultures, just to go through any context or any workplace, educational environment. It's always so cross-cultural, and that's something I always miss when I'm in the US, because even though there are very diverse cities in the US, it's very different to be in a predominantly American context, and it has a different kind of feel to it, of the interconnection between this specific context of the city of Dubai or the city of Sharjah or Abu Dhabi or wherever else, how connected it is to other places in the world. It feels very immediate. So that can come up with like food, or with hearing different languages around you, or just everybody has the whole framework of how they go through the world that's influenced by so many different factors that it is such an exciting and fun thing to get to learn about the world through the people that you encounter on a day-to-day basis. So definitely like the people, the cultural diversity, the food, those are things that I miss.
Yeah. So speaking about food, how do you think migration affects your food life? The kind of things you like to eat when you go out, and what you like to cook?
Yeah, I like to eat everything, anything.
So for instance, when you were here, did you learn some local dishes? Who did you learn them from, and how often do you cook them now?
Yeah, definitely I've been affected by the like food environment here in the UAE, and getting to try food from so many different cultures. I'd say tea is a big thing that I love. like I love like the oolong tea, green teas, that sort of thing, where it's just straight tea. But then I also love karak. I miss karak so much when I'm not here.
Yeah,
Like
I agree.
the wonder of karak. Like we need those places in more places than just here. And yeah, eating so many different variations of like machbus or biryani. So I've had friends who are from South Asia or who are local who have taught me how to cook some of these things. I wouldn't say I'm as good. It's always better when my friends make it. But it is something that I've carried with me, and it's impacted the kinds of things I want to eat. I would say also growing up, I ate kind of a range of food, but it had kind of a maybe more, it was like some Chinese influence and also some very American kind of standard meals, but always with rice. And like now that I really love cooking, then I've been drawn to the more East Asian palate, and so I tend to towards trying out Chinese recipes a lot more.
So you said you and your family celebrate Chinese New Year. So what kind of dishes do you prepare over Chinese New Year celebration?
So we would make the let me think. It's been a while because now I make a Korean dish for New Year.
For Chinese New Year, that's amazing.
I make the Korean like rice cake soup these days.
Oh.
And in the past, then we would do like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 ribs, and we would do. There's like a way of preparing chicken where I don't know what it's called, but it's a recipe that like my great aunt used to make, where she would individually wrap the pieces of chicken in foil and then have it marinated. It's so much work, and then you like unwrap each piece to be able to serve it.
And you put it in the oven?
You put it in the oven.
Oh,
yeah.
interesting.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So it is very diverse.
Yeah.
It's not, yeah, but I think that's kind of amazing where you
Yeah.
move across different societies. You
Yes.
bring all these different cultural elements
Yeah.
to a cultural celebration, and you make it more interesting and more international in a way.
Yeah. And now my family eats duck for American Thanksgiving.
Oh.
So we like kind of bring in, there's a lot of like kind of mixing and borrowing and like just going also towards our taste to what we're interested in. Yeah.
So you recently came back to Dubai to do your research, and you've moved away for a while. How was it like to come back here, and do you think the city has changed, and in what ways?
The city's definitely changed over the years. I've been glad that I've been able to come back really regularly over the years, partially to see my family and partially for my research. I moved back to live here, like I said, a year and a half ago in 2024. And so it's been different to live here now as an adult versus as a child. It's a very different way of operating in the country. There's a lot more bureaucratic things you have to take care of. And then also the city just is very different. Like things like the infrastructure looks different. The streets are different. The roads are different. The driving's more congested. The landmarks have changed. Areas that used to be just sand are now built up into whole neighborhoods, or all these new buildings that have been built up. So it feels very different. And then also the social aspect too. The people who I grew up with as a child have mostly moved away, and they've settled into maybe their passport country, their home country, or another country that they're building a life and a career. And so that aspect too of the people who were so formative in that season of my life are no longer here. And so in a lot of ways it was also an opportunity to rebuild and to build a new relationship with the same city that I've been connected to for so many years, but now looks very different.
So how do you think about the idea of home? Do you feel Dubai is your home, or do you feel the US is your home? How do you define this kind of sense of belonging?
Home's a really complicated word, and it's very difficult to pin down. I'd say that home, as it relates to like places, are often related to a certain time and place. It's not just a location, because like I said, Dubai in 2005 is different than Dubai in 2026. And the feel of the city is different. The people who are here are different. The way things operate, it's not completely like, it's not completely unrelated to what Dubai was then, but it's very different. Places like Kite Beach have changed, where they used to be a place that was just sand and the water, and then the Burj Al Arab, and there were like starfish and sand dollars on the beach, and now there's all this like running track and these different other things that have been built up into that space. And so it's like it's still the same place, but it's also so different. So home is a collection of kind of moments in time and people that were formative, but in a lot of ways that sense of belonging to a place is places of a time, and many of those places don't exist. And so like the US is part of that, the UAE is definitely part of that. In some ways, the history of my family in China, even though I've never lived in China, that's also part of what shaped me, even though I've never like lived there. Yeah, and then also there's a way in which the people that were so formative and that created that sense of belonging in those places in those times, now they're scattered. And so some of those relationships continue, and there can be a sense of that feeling of belonging when I see those people, even if it's in a new place. But there's also a way in which I think growing up in the context of mobility like this, there's grief that's baked into your whole experience of life too, because you're always saying goodbye to things and people and places and seasons. And so you have to like kind of come to terms with being okay with saying goodbye to things and letting them be of a time and letting them be formative for you, but also allowing them to then to be momentary, be transient themselves as well.
That's such a beautiful answer.
Thank you.
So how do you envision your future? Where do you want to live ideally? If you can just imagine, if put aside the practicality, if you can live anywhere in the world, where would be the ideal place?
I don't know exactly. I love moving to some extent now. Now when I'm in the middle of moving, as I get ready to leave Dubai again, it's like, okay, the logistics are not fun, but the process of imagining a new place can be exciting. There's also, of course, the loss of the community that you build over the time there and the loss of familiarity. But I would say that I don't have like a specific place like, oh, I need to live there, but I do like to imagine like, oh, maybe I could look at this opportunity in this country and try something different, try something new. I think it becomes more and more difficult logistically as you get further along to make those kinds of choices with family, with children, with career. Then it takes a lot more things to align correctly for that to work. But right now I'm transitioning back to the US to finish up my doctorate. And so being near family is going to be a really wonderful thing. And yeah, I love the excitement and the learning and the to some extent the uncertainty that comes with going to a new place, but there's also something that can be really meaningful about being planted in one place for a long time. So I'd love to come back to the UAE, but I'm also happy with the opportunity to build into a community and a place in the US right now too.
So you're going to be a mom soon. Where do you think you want your kids to grow up, and what kind of things do you want them to learn about, your experience of migration?
Yeah, I want my kids to experience cross-cultural learning in a lot of the ways that I did. I don't know exactly what that will look like because, like I was saying, it really depends on what opportunities there are to live internationally and all the other logistics that go into like raising children. I want them to have that kind of interest and curiosity and empathy for people who are different and who come from a different heritage and who operate through a different lens of interpretation of the world. And I think that can happen in a lot of ways. I love that I got to have the experience of learning that in this international context in a city like Dubai, in a country like the UAE, where the diversity is just so intense. There's just so much diversity, and there's so many opportunities to learn and so many opportunities to be challenged and to grow in that respect. And I would love for my children to have that kind of experience. I think also having a sense of rootedness can be really meaningful for children in their formative years too. And I think even in my own mobility story, my family was very important for feeling that kind of rootedness. And it can come, again, also in different ways, like just like the cross-cultural learning can happen in a lot of different ways. But I would want my kids to feel like there's a sense of stability and rootedness in some way, that there's a sense of predictability too, that they know things are not going to just completely change on them in a moment, but there's a sense of rootedness too.
Yeah. Okay, so I think that concludes our interview. And Sarah, thank you so much for being here with us today.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.